With the campaign ads just starting with Pierre Poilievre, I believe that's his name, the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada, it brings a lot of concerns and a lot of uncertainty if he was to become Prime Minister of Canada. My concern is last time when the Conservatives were in power with Prime Minister Stephen Harper, he decided to cut back on the eligibility for people for their Canada pensions when they turned 60. He moved that back until they were 65. My concern is with that, when you're turning 60 or when you're around 60, a lot of people, their health is not the best. It brings a lot of uncertainty if certain people at the age of 60 can still continue to work. It could put a lot of people's health and lives at risk. And it brings a lot of grave concern if Pierre Poilievre was to re-engage in calling back the eligibility for Canada pension for people when they turn 60. Because my concern is when people, when they turn 60, there's no clear positive certainty if somebody can still continue to work when they turn 60. Some people, when they turn 60, the best of their health is behind them. And sometimes when people turn 60, it's best for them to take their Canada pension at the age of 60 rather than at the age of 65 so they can get better rest and bring a lot of comfortable and kosher to their environment so that they can engage. Because the concern is what I have, when you elect these politicians in office, they have a lot of lost connected with what goes around with them out in the community. They haven't been engaged in the workforce in quite some time. A lot of them haven't worked for themselves in a long time. They haven't worked in the job site, in the work field themselves in quite some time. And they often lose engagement on what people actually go through on the job sites. It's easier to talk when it's harder to deliver because it's easier to talk, but when it comes to deliver, sometimes it can be harder to deliver than it is talking. And my concern is when we see party politics, I've been noticing over the years that party politics had been failing not only most Nova Scotians across here in Nova Scotia, but most Canadians across Canada also. Because I noticed, one of the things that I noticed is that our elected officials do not engage topics unless certain things are in crisis, such as affordable housing here in Nova Scotia. We have an all-time record-breaking numbers of people living out in tents because affordable housing can't deliver on what it says it is. Affordability of affordable housing is not affordable. It's very unaffordable. And the reality is people have to come to a decision of you either eat or you starve and live in a tent or in an apartment. So what's it going to be? You eat, live in a tent, or you starve and live in an apartment. What's it going to be? And if that's reality, what is happening, which it is, that is the reality, what's happening, we got to hold our elected officials accountable. If we're not going to do that, why are we having these elections in the first place? Why are we voting? When we seen the Nova Scotia Liberal Party in office, we seen the Conservative Party of Nova Scotia in power, what did we see? We seen their two party leaders doing everything in their power, known to man, to not engage the housing crisis in Nova Scotia when they rather just try to convince Nova Scotians and try to tell them that affordable housing is not in crisis, when in fact it is. And what makes it even more disturbing is they got supporters out in the community, which I call spies. They're on the internet. They're out there writing positive things about our politicians in the paper and all this stuff. And then they got their connections with the press. Oh, all right, you put this person's positive write-up on these people so we can prop them up. But when it comes to the average Canadian or the average Nova Scotian voicing their concerns to the press, Do you ever notice how the press often overlooks those people and they rather air the people or print the stories of the people who are saying positive things about our government, saying how great Nova Scotia is and how great our country of Canada is? But the truth of the fact is, our Nova Scotia province isn't doing very good at all. Our country of Canada has seen better days. And when I see Pierre Poilievre, you know what I see? A very arrogant person. And when you have a very arrogant person in charge of anything, did you ever not notice how a rocky and rough road, how they often engage when those people are in charge of something? That's my concern. My concern is Pierre Poilievre could become prime minister, and he could show his ignorance in the direction of people who are out on the street starving because they have to come to a choice between eat, live in a tent, or the second option, starve and live in an apartment. What two options are you going to take? Most people are taking eat and live in a tent because you got to eat. And what it comes down to is that our elected governments are not addressing issues that matter to you. They rather address issues that matter to themselves. So when I see Pierre Poilievre, it brings a lot of grave concerns of uncertainty when I see him. My attitude is, if you don't like any of the candidates that's out there, vote for the independent, even though that they're not going to win. Because the reason why I say that, because it's better to give your vote to the independent candidate rather than give it to these party politics who has no plans of ever addressing community issues that matter to you, when they rather engage issues that matters to themselves. And that's what's wrong with Nova Scotia, and that's what's wrong with our country of Canada. These party politics are causing more damage to our country, more damage to our province than what they're doing any better. So my advice to you guys is, things could be a lot worse. Justin Trudeau, he brought himself down by saying how great Canada is, what sunnier ways things are going to be when he becomes prime minister, when the real answer is the sunnier ways never happened. What it comes down to is we have to take better control of our politics, and we're doing a terrible job on it. And when I see Pierre Poilievre, I see a very arrogant person that I don't like. We can't afford housing. We struggle to pay our power bills. We're struggling with health care. We're struggling to put food on the table. You got the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, involved with Loblaws. You got Pierre Poilievre, deeply involved with Loblaws. And Loblaws, Sobeys, all these chain grocery stores are making a big monopoly out of this crisis, out of people can't afford groceries, and they have no concern, no considerate of your situations at all at home. And if it comes, and what it comes down to is, you, the people at home, can bring this to an end by not re-electing these party politics. But like I said, look at the pandemic. If Justin Trudeau did not get the vaccinations for the COVID-19 vaccination, he'd be a hooligan. He'd be the biggest disgrace to the country of Canada. So they had to bring restrictions in. If he didn't do any restrictions, you're going to look at him as a complete idiot one way or the other. So he did that. The government did that. If he didn't bring the restrictions in place and didn't take them down until the appropriate times and was ready to do so, everybody, the COVID-19 would have been out of control, like down in the United States. Out of control, people dying steady. So really, if I was going to rate Justin Trudeau on the pandemic, I said he did a pretty fair job. For those people, but convoy people going at Parliament Hill in the protests, I would have locked your asses up in jail. My opinion, I think Justin Trudeau did a good job on the pandemic. I take my hat off to him. But all you people who are unhappy with Justin Trudeau, I would say is, if he didn't put the restrictions in place, if he didn't take the restrictions down, things could have been a lot worse. You can go out there and say the pandemic was a fake. Yeah, it was man-made because what it comes down to is China and all these countries are fighting over who wants to run the world. We've been through this many times during the Second World War. The Second World War was all about who wants to run the world first, and that's what the pandemic was all about. And it's not going to get any better. It's going to get worse as the years go on because of the people who we are elected. Justin Trudeau wasn't very realistic. Pierre Poilievre, my opinion, he could pose the biggest threat to our country than what Justin Trudeau ever did. So, my concern is, I'm not sure with Pierre Poilievre. I'm going to stick with Justin Trudeau, and if I'm not happy with Trudeau, I'm going to go independent. But anyways, I suggest that you guys do the same, and I also suggest that you guys get more engaged with the candidates who are running, learn more about them, get all your research about them before you vote, because the last thing what you want to do is vote for a person that will cause more harm to your community than they'll do any good.